Hello everybody, I'm John Hindorf. Welcome to another question and answer session for simraceway.com. We're at Long Beach and our subject, victim if you prefer, is Dario Franchitti. Dario, we're going to get straight into it. We've got lots of user questions for you. First one from Christian Eastwood McQueen. How does the new car come in sensation of speed and general feel to the beasts of the old kart days?
I think everybody still hankers back to that feeling of having 1,000 horsepower under your right foot. There was something pretty special about that. Trying to launch it out of the hairpin here at Long Beach, with all that power. So certainly the cars are closer to that this year with the DW12 than we've had for a long, long time. They're closer to that heavy downforce, big power cars. The one thing we don't have anymore is we're not in a tyre war anymore, so Firestone aren't belting out the really, really soft tyres like they used to. That was as much part of driving those cars as the horsepower. So we're getting closer again. We're not quite back to where we were, but I do have one in my garage, and I'm trying to get Honda to give me a motor for it, because if we get that thing running, look out Knock Hill.
Ooh, overall lap record, I think. Let's move on with another question from one of our Sim Raceway users. This is from Rulager Ferro. He said recently, Dario, you were only 0.05 difference between your real lap and a virtual lap on Sim Raceway. That's pretty impressive, but is it the same in terms of throttle, braking, lines, or were you taking some liberties?
Lines were almost identical. Throttle and braking we're still working on, actually, and it was a little bit of a mismatch, but we're getting closer by the minute. And they were sending stuff back to Italy, and the guys were sending back new data to go in the system, and we're getting closer all the time. And I was quite impressed with it, I must admit, how close we were able to get with it, and actually how much the setup changes as well, just by making the diff changes or springs, all those things. And Nico was a lot of help up there at Infineon there, and it was good, but I could spend a lot of time on that simulator, trust me.
Yeah, you're not allowed to have one, otherwise you'd never see daylight. On a similar vein then, how much you like, asks Kevin Poulton, how much you like of the Sim Raceway and the real DW12?
Again, I think that question applies equally. We're getting closer with it. We're getting very close with it. That feeling of maybe the slow corner understeer is an inherent part of the DW12 with the faster corner nervousness, the sound of the engine, the power delivery of the engine. We're getting pretty close. What
terms do you use to feed that back to the guys at Sim Raceway? Are you using motor racing terms, or are you having to use gaming and programming terms, or a bit of both?
A bit of both, really. Definitely, I certainly talk better in motor racing terms, and then those guys were maybe translating it to the guys back in Italy in words that they could understand. But I guess with that, I only know one way to communicate with that one language. And the changes when they came back, it was literally a half an hour. The changes came back, and we went, "Wow, that's big change." So we're definitely, like I say, we're getting there with it, and I'm very impressed with not only with the progress we made, but the starting point they had was really close.
With Dario Franchitti at Long Beach in California, decidedly non-Californian weather at the moment, but we feel right at home. Some questions for Dario from simraceway.com users. Duncan Ray. Dario, how do you see sim racing developing over the next few years? Obviously, it's a lot more accessible to more people, simraceway.com being right at the head of its game and at that particular type of feeling. Will it merge, and is now Sim Raceway and other simulators, is that a legitimate way into motor racing?
I think it is, especially now with having the Sim Raceway Performance Driving Centre up there in Infineon. You can get that start, you can get used to driving on the simulation to a very, very accurate degree. Then you say, okay, I'm quite good at that. Get to the track, try it out there, see if you like it, because the sensations in a simulator, no matter how good, are a lot different than when you're doing it for real. The G-forces on your body, the risk is another thing. So there is definitely different facets.
But it certainly allows you to maximise the time on track if you've had some time in the simulator first. You never get enough time on track, whether you're a pro or just having a go. If you know where the track goes and you've got an idea of the car you're driving, then immediately it gives you better time in the car.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, track time is so critical, whether you're racing a Formula Ford or whether you're driving IndyCar, Formula One, everybody's going more and more towards simulation now. And having driven, and done a lot of work now on the Sim Raceway model and the simulation of different cars, it's pretty accurate. And so I think if you're jumping into one of the cars on the simulator and then you jump into the real world version, I think you're going to find it pretty close.
Let's move away for some lifestyle questions for Dario now, which now he's really worried about. Carol Brink says, what products do you use to keep your silky locks looking so good?
The same that Hindy uses. I don't know. Whatever the wife uses.
Are you just that person that walks into the shower and whatever's there gets used?
Aye.
That's a typical Scotsman for you there, Carol. So I hope that's answered that one.
Clear that up, Carol.
What about your drivers? What's your daily driver as a car?
Cars are my weakness, as Hindy knows very, very well. My daily driver is actually an Acura TL. I get part of the Honda relationship. We all get company cars, and I drive an Acura TL every day. Back in Europe, I've got a Mercedes E55, which is all kinds of souped up, and I love that old girl. And then there's various Porsches and Ferraris.
He has a weakness for Porsches, particularly little hot rod Porsches. That was from Ward Rasheen, and he says, what was your first car? So was that quite as exotic as what you drive now?
No. My first car was a Fiat Uno Turbo. And I had to sell it fairly quickly because I couldn't afford it. And the next car, I think once I won the McLaren Autosport Young Driver, I bought a Golf GTI, Mark II 16-valve Golf GTI, second-hand. Dad bought it out of the auctions, and it was a great car until some nasty person nicked it out of the driveway in Milton Keynes.
Let's go back to racing now, and this comes from Darren Cox, head of Nissan in Europe, and is the guy behind the Delta Wing project, which your family is heavily involved with. Would you like to have a go of something as radical as the Delta Wing?
Darren has actually been a big backer of the Delta Wing, absolutely. I'm not going to stand here and go, I was one of the people that believed it would work from the off. I said that to all the guys there. I said, I wasn't convinced it was going to work. I wasn't sure when Marino drove it. I was like, tell me, is it real? And at first he couldn't even talk about it. And then he loves it. Marino loves driving it. I'd love to have a go at it now, just to try something completely different. But I must admit, I was a chicken and I wasn't a believer in it, and I was wrong.
We're with Dario Franchitti here for Sim Raceway, and Turbo Womble asks, if you hadn't been a racing driver, what would you have been doing right now? I'd say to be unemployed, but let's see what he says.
I'd probably be back in Scotland watching the IndyCar race on TV and doing something around about the car business. I love cars too much not to be involved, whether it's street cars, racing cars. I wouldn't have been a mechanic because I've got no mechanical aptitude at all. I'd love to have been, but no, not sure on that one.
And finally, for our time here with Dario, Elliot says, if you could have raced in any series, in any other era than where you are now, what would you have chosen?
I'm really tempted to say Formula One in the starting in the mid-60s.
Before the wings.
Before the wings, and then, through that period from the early 60s through to the late 70s. I think, obviously a lot of my heroes drove it in that time, and there was such an acceleration in speed and performance. I think that would have been fun. Obviously, there was such a dangerous time too. That's forgetting all that right now. That would have been a great time to be on the track with some of those guys.
And is there any classic race that you haven't driven in yet that you'd like to?
There's a leading question. No, I'd love to do Le Mans. I mean, we've talked about it many nights over a beer, and that is definitely on the wish list, to not just show up at Le Mans, to try and win Le Mans, to try and get in a car that I could have a shot at winning that race. So, let's see what happens next couple of years.
Dario, thanks for your kind time, having time with you here on a busy weekend, and thanks to all the Sim Raceway users who've submitted these questions for Dario Franchitti.
Thanks, mate. Good job, Carl.